about physical care of the pastor, and we touched on rhythms of work and rest. But rest, physical rest for the pastor, doesn't equate to inactivity. It's not necessarily that we stop doing anything, but it's actually deeper than that. It has to do with the way we relate to the work. So how can a pastor rest physically?
We want to make a distinction, right? Because physical care can be all kinds of things, from what you eat to how much you sleep to all those things. When we talk about physical rest, we're talking about that design of God that He's made with every human being created in His image, that there's a rhythm of rest. And it may not just be, rest isn't sleeping, or rest isn't just sitting and reading a book, even though that can be restful, but it's designed to recharge the body and the soul. And so there's certainly activities that are apart from our ministries that can actually create a restful environment for us. But I would probably summarize the idea of rest around pastors learning how to let go of the burdens. So pastor's life is marked by this constant burden that you carry for that flock. And you don't ever let go of it, even when you go on vacation or even a sabbatical for 2 months or 3 months, right? Resting is about letting go, knowing you will take it up again, but you have to let go of it. I find, as I work with a lot of pastors, who are burnt out and just fried and on empty, oftentimes it's not the ministry that's done that. It's their lack of knowing how to have small increments in their life to let go of the burden and rest from the burden and then pick it back up. Have you found something similar?
Yes, you take responsibility for the flock God's entrusted to you, but at the same time, you entrust them to the Lord. They're the Lord's to care for. And so while we take the responsibility in an active way to care for them, the vast majority of the time, I mean, think of it that way, but ultimately the Lord must care for them. And so there comes a point where we've exhausted our resources in being able to minister in a situation. We have to be able to lay that aside and entrust them to the Lord. And there is a mental, emotional side to that. Whereas I think a lot of us, we want to think that we need to be the one always to carry that burden. And while we have responsibility, it's important to lay it aside.
Yeah, and I've got an example that comes to my mind in regard to this and how I've had to learn how to rest, this distinction. Just about every night when I would lay down as a pastor to bed, go to sleep, my prayer would be two things. One, God, I'm really tired. Thank you for reminding me I'm a human being and I have to sleep, and you don't have to sleep, right? That distinguishing mark between God and us. But the other is, in that moment, if to let go of the burdens so you can rest. So a pastor who has trouble sleeping because he's constantly thinking about all the issues and troubles in the church and his mind won't stop. If somebody's listening to this and experiences that, that's the prime evidence. They're laying down to sleep. They're trying to sleep. They don't know how to let go enough to rest and sleep in that moment. So I think that's a helpful distinction, because somebody may say, I went to bed at 10 o'clock and didn't wake up till 8, but I tossed and turned and really didn't sleep well. And well, that's learning how to let go so you can rest. And that's really what we're talking about.
And there'll be nights where the burden is excessive or extreme. There'll be situations like that, but it ought not be the norm. And then I think the other piece to highlight is how to rest when you're awake, by sometimes stepping away physically to rest. To actually exercise, physical exercise can be a means of resting emotionally and mentally, because it redirects maybe our attention, and it can provide some rest for the pastor.
When I went to our church and dealt with all the hard things, the rhythm I started was on Saturday night. I would go on a hard run so I could come back, and it released all the stress and I was able to sleep. The most restful thing I did was a hard run like that, to make your point. And so I think we want to challenge guys to think about rest doesn't mean just this and this. Rest is whatever is good and life-giving to your soul to fill you back up to go back to the work.
Yeah, physical is a big part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Good wisdom.